Welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre the Beast Creighton Show. Another exciting show, definitely another exciting guest. Let me take you down this road for a minute. Sometimes the best teacher of a lesson, check this out, is ourselves. It's the mind. And sometimes that mind can be an enemy to not only yourself, but check this out, to others that surround you and others that you come in contact with. Today, we're going to go down that beast mindset of how to reprogram that beast mindset, how to take the enemy from within to making it resonate with your purpose. Let's put it like that. I'm going deep today. So this story came across my desk, and I was like, wow, what a beast mindset. But not only that, what makes this so unique is this beautiful lady's occupation. And when you hear her occupation, you ask yourself, like I probably did too when I read it, how the hell could this happen to you? So without further ado, to tell a beautiful story about that beast mindset, let's welcome to the show, Dr. Sarah Michaud. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much, Andre. And I love this whole thing about the beast mindset. It's so awesome because there's a lot around that with the illness of addiction. So this is going to be a great conversation.
You know, before we get into what your profession is, because I'm gonna take the audience down that path.
Yeah.
Tell the viewers a little bit about you. You're in Boston, Mass. Were you born and raised there? Tell the viewers a little bit about who you are first.
Yeah, I mean, I was raised in the suburbs of Boston in a really nice town. 4 brothers. I did have addiction in my family, as I'm sure many of your, followers and audience have, because statistically, a lot of us grow up in addiction. And my mom was an active alcoholic. My dad was a World War II vet with PTSD. So even though everything looked great on the outside, there was a lot going on the inside. And I was the only girl. I had 4 brothers. And, I just remember feeling like most of my childhood, like something, I wasn't quite right. Something was wrong with me. I didn't feel like I belonged. I didn't feel attractive. I think because I grew up with brothers, I felt much more like a boy than a girl. I mean, I joke around that I was a tomboy till I was like 13. So, I mean, I just felt a little lost. And from the first time I picked up alcohol at 15, 16 years old, I thought this is the solution to all my problems. And I didn't know at the time that that was going to set me on a trajectory of a lot of trauma, a lot of issues, a lot of insanity. But ultimately, I got sober young. I got sober when I was 24. So I only drank for about 8 years, but I got really into cocaine. And I think because of the drugs, it brought me down much quicker. So I'm actually really grateful for the drugs. I mean, now, of course, you can get high once and overdose. So it's not like it was in the 80s. But yeah, super grateful that I'm sober now and clean. And I really feel like because I've had the experience and then I ended up going to school and getting the degree, I just want to help people get into recovery. And it's a tricky thing to navigate.
Most people, I'm going to ask you this question because of your occupation. So we're going to go back a little bit.
Yeah.
You mentioned addiction, that most people have some form of addiction. But I'm going to ask you this question because this is a question I never asked a psychiatrist. are there individuals who don't have addiction problems at a young age, but later format because of their circumstances, environments, and people that they're around?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm not someone that says all addicts are the same because we all get there in a different way. I mean, I was someone that I believe had the predisposition because it was in my genetic line.
Right.
And the minute I picked it up, I felt like I was in love. Now, I've seen patients over the years someone who was 65 and retired and became very lonely and started drinking because of his loneliness, or someone whose husband dies and they're trying to deal with their grief and they start drinking more or smoking a lot of pot or whatever. So yes, I don't think you have to have an addiction issue young to, end up having one. There are definitely circumstances. I mean, statistically, they say that if the longer you wait to start, the better off you are down the road. I mean, the younger you are when you start, the worse it can be. So I think the longer you wait, the better. And of course, not everybody that drinks and drugs becomes an addict. And, who knows? There's lots of opinions about that too.
Right. Let's go back again. You talked about your dad.
Yeah.
Post-traumatic stress disorder from the war, but you being the only female, what was it like with your relationship with your mom and your dad? Because usually if you're the only girl, it would seem to be more of a gravitational pull with you and your dad to kind of separate you from the boys, because you said that you felt like a tomboy, but it seemed like your dad would have pulled you to the side as being daddy's little girl and say, you know what, you're a princess. This is blah, 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 blah. Those are the boys, blah, 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 because you mentioned you didn't feel attractive and so forth. So how much impact did your mom and dad have with you? Because you wind up turning to alcohol at a young age.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely huge. I mean, I think your upbringing has a lot to do with it, but that's my training. I'm a psychologist. So, I mean, the thing about having an alcoholic parent, and every alcoholic parent, there's similarities, but there's also differences. My mom grew up with brothers herself, and she had an alcoholic mother. So she really admitted to me much later in her life, before she died, that she didn't know what to do with a girl. So she kind of avoided me. And so we never really had a close relationship. And I think that significantly impacted me. Now, my dad, on the other hand, he did treat me special, and he was a successful attorney. And even though he had PTSD, when he came back from the war, he got the GI Bill. He ended up going to law school for free and became a successful man. But he always had that anger and that rage. And yet the thing about him is, I knew he was there for me. So even though he had his own psychological issues, in a crisis, he was there. And the thing with a parent who has a drug or alcohol problem, by 3:00 in the afternoon, they may be under the influence. So you can't really depend on them. So even though, my dad has issues, my mom did, I was definitely closer to my father. The problem is, Andre, is that in dysfunctional families, what often happens is you become the emotional Band-Aid for your parent. So very often a daughter will bond emotionally with the father and the son with the mother, and will feel responsible for their happiness and well-being. And that's where there's some boundary problems. And that's where the source of codependency is. Why I ended up writing a book on it, because my whole life, my self-esteem and self-worth came from how other people responded to me, rather than getting it from myself, which is what your channel, I think, is all about, is how do I build up my own power and empowerment? Yeah. I would rely on if someone liked me or needed me, or I need to help them. that's where I got my self-worth. And, the problem with that is we can't build how we feel about ourselves from the outside world. We need to do it internally. And thus, like, huge problem today with social media and all that, because people only feel okay if they get enough likes or they get enough followers, or, and that's codependency.
But do you think that the system
Do
is
I think?
let me go here.
Go ahead.
Do you think that the system, now this isn't something that just surfaced. It's just something that just been amplified with what you're talking about. So I would think that in a system of humans, that would be the most weaponized situation, is to put a social media platform together to create the strong validation through other people, like you said, through likes. But my question to you is, why can't people see beyond that? Had it become to the point that it's weaponized so deep that it probably can't be fixed? We created a new hybrid, sort of.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that is so brilliant. The thing is, I'm 66 and I'm not on Instagram. I post some stuff on my Facebook as like a business thing, but I really never got into social media because it's just overwhelming to me. But I think the younger folks, this is a great example. I can tell you, I was talking to this woman. She does a podcast in Nigeria, and she is doing it for younger people in their 20s. And I have a 24-year-old son. And I was asking her about friendships and relationships. And she said to me, which was so sad, she said, I can't really develop friendships in my area right now because if something happens with the relationship, the woman will post it and work it out on their Instagram account rather than communicate directly to her. So she says if anything happens that's like tough to deal with, or they have a fight or they have a conflict, she'll find out about it on social media. And so relationships are so bizarre right now. I can't imagine living that way. And I have heard, although I am not an expert at all, I don't know a lot about it, that people are starting to pull back a little bit. The fact is, it's all to me a delusional system, because people post a certain moment in their lives, a certain dinner in their lives, a certain event, but what are they doing for the 23 other hours of the day? I often laugh because I'll see, some old friend of mine that I know is in a horrible marriage, for example, and she'll be posting this beautiful dinner out on their anniversary, and I'll think, it's all a delusion. It's not real. So, but I'm also older, so I don't know what the solution is. I really don't, but I know I don't have it. I think my solution is try to build up your self-worth and self-esteem from people who love you, your own acts of, we call them esteemable acts, things you do that you can be proud of, rather than relying on someone outside yourself that you don't even know to like you or not.
You mentioned a young age at 15 and coming out of recovery within an 8 to 7 year period. Congratulations on that, by the way.
Yeah, thanks.
I know that had to be pretty challenging, but I'm gonna go here. You mentioned some of the roller coaster effects that was happening at that age, and I'm going there so the viewers that are younger, or the young moms or the young dads, these are things that you may want to look out for in your own household. What were some of the things that you was going through and some of the mistakes that you made? And then the third part of this question is, when did the light bulb go off? When did you say, look, this isn't the way I want to continue going on?
Yeah. I think at least what happened for me, and I will say, 7th and 8th grade, what we call junior high, some people call middle school. I've heard statistically those years when you're kind of trying to find your way, trying to belong to a group, trying to become, a woman or a man in your identity, trying to, you start being attractive to people and dealing with intimacy issues. Those ages, I've heard, can be the ages that most kids can be in a get hospitalized, because I think those are really, really challenging times, like 7th, 8th, 9th grade. Now, the trouble with those ages are, it can lead to incredible loneliness, isolation, low self-esteem. If I'm at school and I'm not in some kind of popular group, the stressors and the peer pressure and wanting to feel like you belong. And I'm sure it's probably even worse now. But that's one of the symptoms I really struggled with growing up, was feeling different, feeling alone. I wasn't a huge athlete. I was trying to find my own group. And then I started using food as my first addiction because it was soothing to me. And I think that's very common. A lot of people I meet in recovery say, oh my God, food was my first thing too. So, sugar and sweets and soothing food. So then I ended up having a weight issue for most of my high school years, which of course then I felt bad about. So then when I got into drugs and alcohol, it felt like, oh my gosh, I belong. I can be funny. People like me. It just set up this system of thinking that it was helping me when it was actually keeping me more distant from myself. And I will say, Andre, this is the problem with substance abuse, is you talk about the mindset, and addiction is mental, physical, spiritual, say. And the mental component of addiction, the main component is denial. So this is the trouble. This is why so many people can have an addiction problem and think they don't have it, because the main component is, oh, I'm not that bad. All my friends drink. Oh, I only go out on weekends. Geez, my boss, and blaming other people, rationalization. I'm drinking because my boss is mean to me, or my wife isn't having sex with me, or my kids are driving me crazy. Rationalization and denial and minimizing are all cognitive concepts. And that thinking keeps people in the cycle of addiction.
How long did it take you to switch one addiction to add in another addiction? You mentioned drugs, and at that young age, how were you not surprised that cocaine and drugs were so easily obtained for you?
Yeah, it's so funny because I said to someone recently, wow, I didn't know cocaine was still around, but of course it is. Yeah, the problem with having a drinking problem is that you'll end up starting to go in places that you may not go typically. And, you'll be at a party and someone will have a little of this and a little of that. And then the problem is, the minute you have it, it really sets up the phenomenon of craving, and you want more. And with cocaine, that led me down, and we don't have enough time for all the trouble I got in with cocaine. I tried to rob a bank one time. I lived in Miami, and I got in all kinds of trouble down there. I've been arrested. So the thing is, drugs cost money. And when you need money, then you usually get into crime. So, that's the problem with a drug addiction. Unlike alcohol, maybe I could have drank for 10 or 20 more years. I don't know. But I thank God for the drugs, because I started getting into a lot of trouble. My body started to break down. I started to hang out with a lot of scary people. And basically what happened to me is I woke up in a drug house one day, just on the floor, feeling bugs crawling all over me, just in this kind of overdose state of feeling like I was losing my mind. And I stood up, and at that time there were phone booths, and I went outside this apartment building and called my brother, and he ended up getting me into a hospital. And that was the beginning of my journey. And fortunately, I just loved recovery, and I loved just suddenly feeling like, oh my God, I have an opportunity to grow, to change, to get off of this stuff. And I've just loved it. It's not that it hasn't been hard, and I've had my moments, absolutely. Another reason I wrote the book was because I married someone in recovery, and he ended up relapsing. And that was just, my life blew apart.
I'm gonna ask you this question, and
Yeah.
and thank you for being so forthcoming, because you're a professional. And you know what I tell individuals, I love it if I'm dealing with a therapist that's not afraid to tell me the truth about what she went through,
Right.
or he. In this case, it's a female.
Yeah.
But my question is, and I know you can't really say yay or nay, but how likely is it for two addicts to really travel down the road to success?
Well, it depends if they're clean or not. I mean, I'm in a recovery program, and I know tons of people that have gotten married and have successful relationships. The problem is you always need to prioritize your recovery. Your partner cannot come before your recovery. And I think what happens is, and again, this is the thing with codependency, is a lot of people in recovery have codependency issues. So they'll be afraid to speak up. They'll put their partners before themselves. They'll think they need to solve their partner's problems rather than their own. They'll self-sacrifice, so all of these symptoms of codependency come out in relationships with addicts. And that's a danger zone, because if you're going to have a successful relationship and you're in recovery, you have to put your recovery first. And that can get lost when life gets busy. I mean, my husband at the time, he lost a business. He ended up having he had a surgery, and that's what happened to him. He had stopped going to his recovery meetings. He had a surgery. He got on opiates. And then the next thing you know, his life is, getting colorful, so to speak. And of course, addicts who relapse often lie. So I really didn't figure it out for a while. And that's tough too.
When did you figure it out?
I figured it out when probably maybe 6 months or so after he had had this surgery. And I literally went in my closet and I was pulling down a shoebox that I had some stuff in, and all these pills came raining down on me. And he had been hiding the pills up on this shelf that I didn't know. And it was like, Andre, it was this moment of like, everything that had been happening suddenly made sense to me. Like, for example, I would come home from work and he'd be asleep on the couch and he'd just say he was really tired. But looking back, he was probably, took a bunch of Percocets. So all of a sudden, everything that had been happening with us became crystal clear. But at the same time, I'm like, oh my God, I'm a psychologist. I work with addicts all week. I've been in Al-Anon for years because of my mother. I'm sober. I have a doctorate in psychology, and I didn't figure this out. That's why I ended up writing the book, because I thought, this is so hard to figure out. Like, is your partner using again, observing their behavior, trying to see the truth of the situation without going into your own denial? It can be very tricky. I mean, I've had couples come in and the wife says, I didn't know he was drinking, and the guy's been drinking for 20 years. Like, how did she not know? But it's the nature of this problem. It's very hard to figure out if it's not obvious.
Yeah, but that did bring up a key situation here, and I don't mean
No, go ahead.
I don't mean to harbor on it, but this is what you're trained to do. Is it because he was your husband and you didn't want to overstep boundaries? Because we mentioned boundaries, recovery, and taking accountability.
You froze for a sec. Okay, now you're back. You're exactly right. I mean, that is the trouble. I think when it's your own wife, husband, child, parent, I think we get emotionally, it's much harder to see for some reason. Like I can see it with friends of mine and their spouses and say, well, it's obvious the guy drinks too much. But when you're in it, it's just really hard. I mean, I was working full time. I had like a third, fourth grader at the time, and you're preoccupied with that. You're preoccupied with your life. And again, if I ask like, geez, are you okay? And he says, yeah, I'm just tired. Or yeah, I just didn't make the appointment because I worked late. Like addicts have excuses for everything. And it took me a while. Like then all of a sudden I saw it and I saw it clearly. And then it takes a while because you love someone and you want to give them options. You know, I said he needed to go to treatment. He went to treatment and then he relapsed after he got out of treatment. So I had to ask him to move out. You know, so I mean, it takes a little while of taking these steps. And he ended up dying eventually. I mean, he never got clean again. And that's someone who had 15 years of recovery. And that's why this is such a dangerous disease. You know, so many people online now, there are so many different recovery communities and people that are helping addicts and alcoholics. And the fact is, you know, someone might just have a year of sobriety and be out there trying to help people, or you know, it's very tricky to navigate. And that's why, like, you really need support and you really need what I call a reality check. You need other people to help you to see the truth because it's hard to see.
Let's go back and shed a little bit more light on this topic. You mentioned that addicts can lie
Yep.
to themselves. They can create their own so-called utopia, so to speak.
Yes.
You are a professional now. How were you able to, were there moments that you were doing exactly what you just said? And if so, what was it? And then how did you get out of it? Because to be where you're at today requires intense studying. And you can't have those triggers delaying you. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. I mean, you know, there's a debate around this whole issue of what does it take for someone to stop? I mean, my experience is I needed to suffer enough to know that there was no place else to go. Now, you know, there's a lot of things that have been developed over the years where you try to meet someone where they are, motivational interviewing, it's called, and you try to talk to them about, you know, what are the consequences so far? What are the things being affected and what is not being affected? But my experience of working with people for literally over 30 years is someone won't stop using unless a crisis occurs. They lose their job. Their wife says they're going to leave them. They get embarrassed at a soccer game because they're drunk and they're watching their kid play or whatever. Like until we can feel the pain that's greater by using drugs and alcohol than the fear of stopping them, we don't really get motivated to stop. And again, that's why I talk so much about enabling behaviors and codependency, because very often people stay with alcoholics and addicts and they don't see that. They think they're helping them, but if they don't have a consequence for their partner who's drinking or their child or a friend, if you don't set a boundary and say, look, honey, I love you, but if you can't stop drinking, you're going to have to move out in the next week. You know, people have a really hard time setting a limit, but my experience is until that happens, people won't stop because there are no consequences. You have to have a consequence to want to stop.
That makes perfect sense. And now that you have stopped, How has the trajectory been for you as far as life become a little bit more clear? Because you mentioned that the mind is the enemy and you have
Yes.
to redo that. Let me go here. Let me rephrase this.
Yeah.
Let me rewind it. There seems to be steps. We hear that all the time in AA and all these things. There's steps. I don't really think that the steps can be applied if you haven't come full circle with the complete addiction pattern, which, from what I'm understanding, is codependency, then the addiction, then the non consequential actions from the actions. So you are a therapist. What would you say would be the rules of engagement for so what may be a successful treatment plan? Because no plan is going to be successful unless you have that beast mindset to say, you know what, I've
Yes.
had enough. This is what I need to do. I'm sticking with it through hell or temp. But then you also need to realize that I think in order to get away from the codependency, if you have that kind of trajectory mindset, you have to look deep within yourself. That's why I go back to what I said with the mind being the enemy. You got to find a way to tell the mind that you're not the enemy. You're not going to beat me in this game. What's your take on that? And is there a method that can be implemented for individuals?
Yeah, I mean, oh God, such great questions. This is the thing is, so I said that what makes up addiction is rationalizing, denial, minimizing, romanticizing, all of these cognition types. The trouble is this. I might use all those things to keep drinking or drugging. So now I put down the drugs and alcohol. And what happens to my mind? Those things are still there. So now, Andre, I may not be rationalizing my booze use, but I can rationalize, deny, or minimize anything else. So, for example, those parts of my thinking, I could get sober and now the alcohol and drugs are pushed aside, but I could start rationalizing having an affair with a married man or, getting into bulimic behavior or gambling or whatever. I mean, the thing is, and you said it, if I don't look at what I call and what Bill W., the founder of AA, calls the underlying causes and conditions. If I don't look at those things, then I am going to keep using my alcoholic mind to blame others, to, deny my own behaviors, to rationalize behaviors, to keep doing behaviors that don't work for me. I can keep doing things, but I'm just not drinking. I mean, you've heard the saying dry drunk, for example. So that's someone who puts down the drugs and alcohol, but keeps doing the same behaviors. Now, whether it's the steps or therapy or something else, some key things that need to happen is educating yourself about the nature of addiction, which is those mental components, the physical components. And really, we haven't talked much about the feeling components. I mean, getting sober, and this probably goes for dealing with many issues you talk about here, is all about learning how to tolerate discomfort. So tolerating the discomfort of angry feelings, anxiety, things that scare you, fears I have, shameful feelings I have, guilt I have. Maybe I've been drinking for 20 years and I wasn't a great parent and I put down alcohol. I'm going to have tremendous guilt. If I can't tolerate and move through some of that discomfort, I'm in trouble. Mm-hmm. And really, recovery is all about facing my history. So facing the things I've done, things maybe that weren't that great, also facing things that were done to me. So I have to face my history, acknowledge it, tolerate the feelings, and then I need to, get a recovery program, whatever that looks like. Because the thing is, if I have an addiction problem, I'm going to think I can do it alone. That's like one of the enemies of addiction is isolation and thinking I can solve it by myself. That's why you really need other people, whether it's a group, a community, a therapist. You need other people to reality check, because I always say what is required, whether it's for a successful relationship, a successful recovery, is willingness. Willingness to grow, to change, to learn, and the awareness that my mind is just going to tell me lies. It's not all full of like great ideas. I mean, my mind is full of the past and how the past affected me. A person I once did a workshop with years ago said this: if I don't change my thinking, and like you're talking about, get this new mindset, I'm going to take the past and I'm going to throw it into my future, and I'm going to live into my past, because I am not getting the awareness that my thinking and my belief systems are all from the past. My job to create the beast mindset is to get rid of those mindsets from the past. I'm not good enough. I'm not wanted. I'm not loved. I'm not smart enough. All that stuff. And create a new mindset of like, how am I going to really be of service? How am I going to have the best life possible? How am I going to find something that's my passion? How am I going to be a contribution to others? How am I going to be free from the past and live into the future? So that to me is super important, but you can't do that unless you do some of that work with someone else around what's driving me that's from the past.
Before we
I don't know. Hopefully I made sense.
You made perfect sense. Before we wrap up, there's a few more questions I want to get out of here. We talked about the new system where people are now, where social media is almost becoming a weaponized illustration or version of what you just went through. Where do you see the future now with our generation now, that pretty much everybody wants to be validated right now? Remember we grew up, we had to know a phone number, your address. We went outside and played. We enjoy watching the night lights come on. Now everybody is so buried in the social media that to the point that you have to be a part of the social media. But we also see from a therapist standpoint, I'm not a therapist, that this can also be enabling these same type of behaviors, which may be a different type of addiction in the future. Maybe called something totally different. What's your take on that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it is an addiction. I mean, I've been with people who can't stop looking at their phones. I mean, it's like, we're at a coffee shop and it's like, hey, put the phone down. I mean, thank God my son and I have an agreement about that. But if you're, anything can be an addiction. And you're right, whether it's the phone, whether it's looking at my Instagram account all day and seeing if more people are viewing me. I mean, I think people have to hit some kind of emotional bottom to want to change. And I think how that happens is people are getting really isolated and lonely. I mean, my son talks about it. He said some statistic the other day that like over 50% of people his age, he's 24, don't have a best friend anymore. Like we grew up with a group of kids and we had, because people are meeting people online or they're in this kind of pseudo relationship with strangers or people, gaming or interacting online, that they're not getting the experience and the emotional maturity and development about how to have a mature relationship. Yeah. And that requires, interacting.
But how do we really incorporate that back into a society where technology evolves quicker than the human element?
I don't have the answer for you. I mean, again, I think people need to hit some kind of bottom where they're feeling the effects of it. And even for myself, I mean, I went through a period within the last year where I felt like I was using my phone too much, looking at it too much. I was feeling disconnected from people. And I had to do some strategies about, okay, I'm only going to look at my email a certain amount of times a day, twice a day, and see if there's any messages I need to respond to. I'm only going to look at this a certain amount. So I want to become more engaged in the world. And I also think it's important to look at your motive. Like, what is your motive to look at an Instagram account all the time? Or what's your motive but to go on Facebook? Is your motive to feel connected, or is your motive to feel better than because you have more likes than someone else? I mean, it's really starting to get in touch with your self-esteem just doesn't come from the outside world, because the outside world is always changing. So you have to build up something from within. I would even, say a spiritual program of some kind. So, you have value and have a connection beyond, the internet or technology. But again, I'm also a certain age, so it's easier for me, I think.
Yeah, I would. I know that was a loaded gun to throw at you. It would appear, though, that should be something that therapists around the world should kind of look at and work with our politicians. Not to say ban social media, but just think about it.
Absolutely.
When you're dealing with the young mind, even what we might call even the more mature mind, you don't know how somebody's going to respond to anything. Just like when TikTok was about to go down last year, you seen the world go into a panic. You seen more of a panic from social media about the collapse than you did the pandemic. And I'm thinking, okay, what are we missing here?
Right.
You're more concerned about a social media attachment than a pandemic that could kill you. But then I'm thinking to myself, social media will kill them, because that's what people are attached to. That's how people are getting
right.
So the thing is, do you think that something that this needs to be taken a little bit more seriously? Because you can have a kid that goes off and sees the wrong thing, become isolated, and go back, and we have massive shootings in the schools again.
Absolutely.
Or in the workplace.
I mean, you're definitely preaching to the choir. I mean, I definitely feel this way. I mean, right now, in the last 5 years, I've been transitioning to other things. So I'm not necessarily seeing a full-time practice now. I'm doing some other things. But if I was a therapist starting right now, that would definitely be a priority. I mean, I remember seeing a gal who was literally stunning. She was like 20 years old, stunning. And she came to see me for a substance abuse issue. But also, it turned out, she had major body dysphoria, it's called. And she used to tell me that she would take pictures of her face and body from literally every single angle, because she had to study and make sure she looked a certain way when she posted on her Instagram. And I thought, oh my God, like, talk about like being preoccupied. I mean, this is the thing also, Andre, I will say.
Yeah.
Is codependency recovery, to me, is could really help people with this, because I'm going to say what the definition is. The definition is, I'm not responsible for other people's thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. My self-esteem doesn't come from the outside world. It comes from me. And I can't save or fix or change anyone. So the focus becomes much more about what I call my hula hoop. I can change myself. I can focus on myself, but I'm not going to change anybody else. And I think if most people are taught, look, focus on you, improve yourself. Like, stop thinking you need so-and-so to like you or this boy to ask you out. Or like, change who you are. That's the only thing we have control over. Right? So, I mean, yeah, I mean,
You said a
again, it's a
mouthful.
huge problem. Yeah.
You said a mouthful. Before we wrap up, what
Yeah.
should the viewers get from this story and in all that you've gone through? Because clearly you have changed the mindset. You've gotten rid of the enemy from within. But at the end of the day, what should somebody have resonated from this story?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's so counterintuitive because we often think we need value or, like you say, validation from someone else. And really, to me, it's the opposite. It's like if part of the first tool of recovery and codependency is self-care, because so many people that are preoccupied with making everyone else happy and not themselves dismiss their own feelings, dismiss their own needs. And the problem with that is you end up not taking care of yourself and you end up with huge resentments, huge anger, depression, physical problems. I mean, people don't realize how much neglecting yourself affects everything. So my recommendation would be, the first thing is to just pull the attention onto your own self-care. What are you neglecting? What do you need to do to take care of yourself? What do you need to do for your own happiness? And, the second thing is, if you're doing anything you believe that's maybe an addiction or that you're struggling with or that you're wondering, is this affecting me? The minute you start thinking, geez, this might be a problem, usually it is. So if you start thinking about, geez, am I drinking too much? I guarantee you probably are. So start to think, how am I going to get rid of the things in my life that aren't serving me anymore? And 3, take an action step. Take one action step today. Just one. Yeah.
Doctor.
Yes.
Sarah, me show. How can the viewers tell me about the book? How can the viewers get the book, and what's the purpose of the book?
Yeah, I mean, the book is half memoir and half self-help. So if you've related to any of this, if you can't afford it, email me. I'll send you a copy. But you can get the book on Amazon. It's called Co Crazy. And it's, again, half memoir about my own journey in recovery and codependency recovery. And then I give a lot of tools, a lot of tips. So the book is called Co Crazy. I also have a little YouTube channel called Leaving Crazy Town with Finn and Sarah. And it's with my best buddy, Finn. And we talk about codependency issues, addiction issues, but we also have lots of fun, and we use a lot of personal experience and tell stories that hopefully people can admit to. So, and I have a website, Dr. Sarah Michaud. You can email me there, and there's a bunch of podcasts on there also.
You know what? Thank you so much for taking time out, Doctor, to come on the show and share such a beautiful beast mindset. Make sure you guys subscribe, like, share, follow. And remember, like I've always said, all it takes is one click of a button to touch somebody's life, make a difference in somebody's life as well as your own. This has been another exciting episode of the Andre the Beast Creighton Show.